Hey everyone, and welcome to the Uncorked Corner podcast, where we cover the full spread of food and beverage industry topics. My name is Bianca, PR and marketing professional by day and food and wine connoisseur by night.
And my name is Nick, an accountant with a passion for barbecue, beer, and whiskey. Today we welcome Chris Takash of the Malden-based Idle Hands Craft Ales.
In this episode, Chris tells us about how he got into the brewing space, how he landed just north of Boston, and gives us a taste of their Rocktoberfest brew, plus what the name is all about.
If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to us. With that said, let's welcome Chris to the show.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Today we're excited to welcome Chris from Idle Hands in Malden, Massachusetts. So we'd love to get started by having Chris tell us a bit about himself and how he got started with the company.
Hi everyone. As Bianca said, my name is Chris. I am the owner of Idle Hands Craft Ales. Idle Hands has been around for 9 years at this point. And how I got into the business, I come from a home brewing background. So I was a home brewer for, 18 years prior to starting the business. Professionally, I was in software development prior to, becoming a brewer. And, I basically got tired of sitting behind a desk all day long and working for somebody else, and decided to take a passion and turn it into a livelihood. So 9 years later, here we are, and we're still around.
Nice, and that's funny. We actually have someone that we recently interviewed from Island Dog Brewing up here in South Portland, Maine, that has a very similar background. He was in IT, and then he got into home brewing. We just did a home brewing episode with him recently that'll be coming out soon. So it seems like a lot of people start off with the home brewing for a while and flow into it as a sort of second career, which is a really awesome thing to go into.
I think it's a pretty common occurrence with with the smaller craft breweries, at least. It's you either come from a brewery where you worked before and start something, or you build it from the ground up. And we chose the second part.
Yeah, and one thing our audience hasn't heard much about is your unique credentials with the BJCP. Can you give us some background on what that's all about and what you've done with the title?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too involved with it anymore just because I don't have the time with it to dedicate to it. But, prior to starting Idle Hands, I was really into home brewing. It all started back in college when my uncle got me a kit for Christmas one year. And, it was something that followed through, my professional career in life. And it just was kind of in the background of things. And then, I started getting a little bit more serious about the brewing side of things and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. And so I got into the BJCP program, which is basically the beer judge certification program, and used that. I got involved with our local homebrew club and BJCP, and used that as really a way to kind of help educate myself, I think, to a lot of the various, at least traditional styles at the time. And so I got, into judging beer, and, participating a lot in homebrew competitions and stuff like that. So I think it was a great education. And it was certainly something that, you can do on your own, as long as you find the right group of people to kind of, help push each other along. And I would say, if you have a local homebrew club, that's a great place to start. And usually you'll find some pretty passionate people there that will allow you to, or will help you kind of, on your journey to kind of to learn more and more about what quality beer is.
So it's funny. So Bianca has a background in taking some of the sommelier courses, and I've always been looking for something for beer and whiskey are my two passions. So I didn't really know there was this whole beer judge certification program. Would you sort of equate that to the sommelier program for wine?
I think it's a little bit different. I feel like I don't know a ton about the sommelier programs, but I'm a feeling that those are more geared towards consumer-oriented, like presentation of the wine and understanding of the wine, where the BJCP programs are more along the lines of, critically judging a beer and making sure that it adheres to certain style characteristics. So I don't know if they necessarily line up, and Bianca, you feel free to correct me. Again, I'm not super educated on what, I know what a sommelier is, I just don't know what is involved with that kind of program.
Yeah, I'm sure there are similar beer programs to the sommelier program. I know theirs is very focused on like, it's very service oriented, and there's a lot more consumer facing, as you were saying. So it's a little different, but I think a lot of the time you end up falling into those judging type positions just with the experience and with the credentials, especially in the wine world.
Yeah.
And what's the process for getting into that program and really kind of working your way through that? Are there classes in person that you go and you take where you get to sample these different beers, or?
Yeah, I mean, the way I went about it was we formed a study group within our homebrew club of people that were serious about taking the exam. And so, if you go to the BJCP website, they do a pretty good job of kind of giving you all the material and kind of what the exam is about, at least, and what it covers. And so you can take that material and break it up into chunks and whatever, and study it with different people. And the way we did it was, we would every week, I don't know if it was every week we met, or maybe every couple weeks that we met, but we basically would take a couple styles and learn about them. Somebody would present a create a presentation. They would run through the presentation and kind of be like the subject matter expert of that particular style or particular styles. And kind of help the other people learn a little bit about it. And there's other material that's in the exam too. So it took us, I don't know, maybe 6 months combined to kind of really get through all the material and feel comfortable enough where we could start taking the exam. And the exam's not easy. It was pretty brutal back, when we took it, or when I took it back in, I think it was 2009-ish time frame, maybe even earlier than that. And I know the format has changed since then, but it was 4 hours or 3 hours of kind of written essay type of questions, a little bit of multiple choice, but a lot of it was really kind of short answer or essay questions. And then there was a sampling part to it too, where they would give you, what they call classics, some classic representations of styles, and you'd have to judge those styles, and they would throw in, a beer that was kind of out of style or had some, flaws in it and stuff like that. And you'd have to pick out those flaws. And so it was a pretty comprehensive exam. And once you take that exam, they then send it off to a judge or a grader that then grades it, and it takes a while for it to get back because they literally have to read through all of these short answers and essay type of questions, and then judge whether you answered it appropriately or not.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It definitely seems very involved to get into that, but it's good if you're going to be judging up other people's beers. You should definitely know them and really be able to do that objectively.
Yeah.
To get out of that and out of your personal background and more into the brewery, what was the spark behind really starting Idle Hands Craft Ales?
I mean, there's really two things. My background is in engineering, and I graduated from the University of New Hampshire with a degree in civil engineering. And so I did that just a little bit out of school, realized I ended up hating it, and then fell back on some computer skills that I had picked up and really got into software development. And then really, that was a good part of, 10 years of my life. I got a little bit disenchanted with kind of software development at the time and kind of doing the work that I was doing. And so I went back to school to get my MBA, and graduated from Babson with a degree that was really heavily focused on entrepreneurship. And so while I didn't jump into, the entrepreneur game immediately, I kind of went back into software engineering, oddly enough, to kind of really, I guess, recoup, some funds to some degree, how much I spent on school. But, it was kind of always in the back of my mind that, I spent some time in school kind of studying all this stuff that maybe I should, start to use it. And then got to the point where I was just, done with kind of working for somebody else and doing software development and engineering, and just decided to again, take that passion that had really been a big part of my adult life and, turn it into something that was going to be a little bit more meaningful to me and my family and really build something from the ground up. So, it was combining a passion of beer and home brewing, and then, with something that, I wanted to do anyways, which was really build something from the ground up and create this business. So it was, I guess, a good mingling of, two threads that were kind of going on in my life at the time.
9 years later, you're certainly doing a great job. We saw that you were labeled as one of the 2020 best brewers or the 2020 best brewer from Boston Magazine.
Yeah, no, that was
specifically highlighted your sour beer series, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a great honor and completely unexpected. There's a lot of great breweries in the Boston area, and I was super, super excited when we learned about that. I thought it was a joke actually at the beginning. One of my employees sent me a text message, with, "Hey, we're Boston's best brewery 2020." I'm like, "No, come on, stop pulling my leg." And then I finally, saw the article. I was like, "Wow, this is awesome."
Yeah, it's definitely an honor, especially only having been in business for 9 years. So you're really making a name for yourself. And we have the four seam, which I know they called out there. But kind of going back, since we haven't really talked about the styles that you make, the style ales that you make, why did you decide to take inspiration from the Belgian and German style ales instead of some of the more local choices?
You have to rewind back to 2010, when we envisioned Idle Hands, and back at that point, there was this. I want to say they were really there was the rise of like Belgian ales in popularity, and so at the time we were bootstrapping the business, and we started off as a very small nano operation with some pretty rudimentary equipment. And so at that point I was really, really into Belgian beers, and with the equipment that I had and the styles that I had been home brewing, and my excitement for those type of beers kind of led us in that direction. And so when we started brewing, we were 100% Belgian focused, and so we were brewing very Abbey-centric beers, like, doubles and triples and, singles and, some other stuff like that. And then we eventually kind of started spreading our wings a little bit once we kind of went through our first upgrade of our system. And that's how the German lagers, came into being. So, we spent about about 3 maybe 2.5, 3 years on the nano system. All the while, well, not all the while, but most of that time I was doing it on a part-time basis. So I was still doing software engineering, and then doing the nano brewing thing, at nights and weekends and everything like that. But we upgraded equipment once I realized that this was going to be a viable business, and I either needed to start spending more time paying attention to it and growing it, or decide to shut it down, because where we were just wasn't going to be sustainable. So we upgraded equipment, brought in a 5-barrel brew house and some 10-barrel tanks, and this is obviously more professional stuff. So we were able to really brew a lot of other styles that allowed us, to take a full advantage of the equipment that we had. So I had spent a few winters over in Germany and Austria going skiing on ski vacations, and really fell in love with fresh lagers, fresh German lagers, and wanted to kind of bring that back to the US, because the stuff that you get over here from Germany it's just a shadow of its former self when you actually taste it fresh, over in Europe. So that's how the German lagers really came to be a big part of our portfolio. It was just me wanting to kind of replicate that characteristic here in the US. And so we brewed our first lager back in, I think it was like January of 2013, possibly, something like that. It was definitely in 2013, and it's just kind of grown as a big part of our portfolio now.
And with your tap room and brewery, I know I've driven by, I haven't actually been inside myself, But do you really envision that when you were starting the brewery, is that being the primary place that it was going to be consumed, or did you want to have more of a distribution mindset where people could get your cans and take them home?
Um, Again, the landscape was a lot different back in 2011 when we started. The idea of a brewery tap room didn't exist or couldn't exist in Massachusetts as the way the laws were written. But that, it soon changed after we started, maybe like a year to, 18 months. But at that point, we'd kind of already built out our brewery, and that there was no place for us to put a tap room. Nor, if anybody had ever been to our Everett facility, would they really want to spend time there drinking beers, even though, Night Shift was right next door to us. So, and they had a thriving tap room, which to this day, I'm still really surprised that anybody would want to spend any significant amount of time in that location. And it certainly wasn't what I wanted to present as kind of what Idle Hands was about anyway. So we originally envisioned it being just a tasting room where you'd be able to taste some beers and then eventually buy a growler or a bottle or whatever to take home. And then when we upgrade or moved to Malden, we had a brand new facility, and at that point, I really saw the writing on the wall and how important a tap room was, and spent a significant amount of time making sure that we had a tap room in place where we'd be able to actually serve our beers on site and have people come and try them as they should be drank. So I think the tap room, to us, it's a big part of our business. Obviously, less part of our business right now, but it'll eventually return, and we thoroughly enjoy having that one-on-one customer interaction that we can have, and really help people understand the beers that we're brewing and enjoying, and hopefully give them some little bit more information about those specific styles that we're really interested in making.
And now when it comes to that tap room located in Malden, is there any particular reason why that's where you chose? Prefer city and region?
We started off in Everett, and Malden's really the town next door to it. I've always felt closer to, I guess, the north side of Boston than any other part of the Boston area. So when we were looking for new locations, we really concentrated on, those towns that were, really in that kind of vicinity. And Malden kind of just popped up as kind of an up and coming place. I wanted our brewery to be as T accessible or, mass transit accessible as possible, just because it made more sense for, our consumer base. To be able to ride public transportation to and from the brewery. And so, we spent a lot of time in Malden looking for locations, and the one that we ended up settling on couldn't be any better. It is literally a 3-minute walk from the Malden Center T stop. And so it is like, it's great. I wish it was a little bit bigger, but right now it's perfect for us.
Yeah, and for anyone north of Boston, you guys have a great little outdoor patio that I saw when I was there. It's really a great spot. We're from Melrose, so we're very, very close to where the tap room is.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Neighbors on the other side.
Cool. So you guys have a food menu there as well. Are you still doing that right now? And what do you have for people who are visiting the tap room?
So we're only allowing service on our patio right now, just because of the COVID concerns. And we've pared everything down. Before, our patio would be, jammed, on a nice, warm summer evening and stuff like that. But, we obviously have had to change those plans a little bit. So we have 6 tables with 4 seats at each table. So a max of 24 people, really on our patio, which makes a nice spread out, scenario. So we're not allowing people in the tap room inside the building necessarily. Obviously, you can go in there to go to the bathroom and stuff like that, but we're not seating people in there. And I don't know, we'll see what happens as the weather gets colder. We'll have to come up with another plan. But right now, yeah, you can visit us, hang out in our tap room or on our patio and enjoy the beers that we have available.
And we saw that the Rocktoberfest was just released today, which is one of the beers that or the ales that we have here. Is that something that you do every year, or is that new for fall 2020?
We've been brewing Brock since 2015. So it's named after my son, who was born in 2014. So yeah, so it's been 20, I guess no, maybe we brewed it the first time in 2014. That probably would have been right, 2014. Yeah, no, we brew it every year. It's one of my favorite beers that we make, and it's, you know, a lot of our regulars are big fans of it too. So, you know, we brew more and more of it every year, and it seems like we can't make enough. So, you know, I'm excited to see people drink it for sure.
So every year, does it just come around this time, this fall season, or do you ever drop
Yeah,
it?
I mean, it's our fest lager, right? So it's designed to, you know, be that Oktoberfest type of beer. And generally we have a party, you know, a Oktoberfest party, you know, use the second week in September, but that's not happening this year for obvious reasons. But yeah, and it's usually just a big blowout, you know, that we have, and people drinking tons of Rocktoberfest and having a good time, and oompa music and the whole 9 yards. So, but next year it'll come back.
That's awesome. What are the primary, like, what is the flavor difference in that one? Is it like centered around fall flavors, or is it just brewed differently?
No, it's just it's a traditional, you know, Munich style Oktoberfest that you would find over in the tents over in Munich, celebrating there. So it's, you know, it's got a little bit more kind of caramel sweetness you'd find than some of our other beers. It's, you know, 5.5%, so you can kind of, you know, drink a fair amount of it without getting too trashed. And it's, you know, it's just a prototypical, you know, Munich lager, or not Munich lager, but Oktoberfest lager. Nothing special about it.
And tell us a little bit about the four seam that you went. I know Bianca's got that one there with her too.
Yeah, four seam. I mean, that's, you know, that's probably the beer that we're best known for at this point. You know, we oddly enough, when I first started Idle Hands, I always said we would never brew an IPA. But you know, it's as things change and the markets change, and so, you know, when we launched the Malden facility with a tap room, I knew that we would have to make an IPA. Otherwise, people would either not come, or they'd come and have one beer and they would leave, because there's such a percentage of craft beer drinkers that are that's either all they drink or all they really care about. So we basically, there's a series of beers that we call Change Up, which are always IPAs, which is basically our test bed. And, you know, we used Change Up to basically narrow in on what our New England IPA was going to be. So I think we brewed 6 different iterations of Change Up before we really landed on what we wanted Four Seam to be. And all those, you know, those iterations were either playing with different malt profiles, different hops, different hopping techniques, different yeast strains, you know, a bunch of different kind of combinations of ingredients and techniques, to get to the point where we were super happy with what we wanted. And so once we had kind of gathered all that data, we were able to, like, you know, put it all together and say, all right, this is going to be our, you know, our flagship New England IPA that we're gonna, you know, rest our hat on. And you know, it's done really well. It's by far the biggest seller in the brewery, the one that we make the most beer of in the brewery, and the one that kind of keeps the lights on in the brewery. So it's been a great beer for us.
Yeah, it's such a popular style, and I don't think there's any style of beer that's, I guess, more closely related to craft beer. It's the first thing that'll pop in most people's minds when they hear about it. So it's important to have a good one in the lineup. Do you find that the flavors in it really sort of come back to your passion behind those Belgian and German style ales, or is it like a true, you know, sort of bright, hoppy, citrusy New England?
I mean, it is, you know, it's mostly citrus juice and tropical fruit like notes to it. So I wouldn't say it's close to any sort of Belgian beer that we would have made before. In fact, it's not obviously not a Belgian beer at all.
Right.
You know, I'm not the the biggest fan of IPAs, to in all honesty. I will drink our lagers all day long, but it would be foolish of me not to brew an IPA. I would just be hamstringing myself, without having one in the market. So, it's not that it's not that we're going to brew a half-assed one. We're going to brew the best one that we possibly can, and make it as good as we can. But in the end, it's not really a beer that I'm personally super passionate about.
For our listeners who aren't as familiar with beer, what is it that makes an IPA different than, some of your other ales and lagers and just regular beer?
Yeah, so the IPA style is really known for the hops, and going into the different types of hops that you go in there, or that you put in there, and it's coaxing flavors from hops, where some of the other styles of beer are more focused on the malt aspects of the beer, or even the yeast characteristic, that the beer will come out in the beer. So there's really kind of, I guess you can think of it as like three different real flavor contributors to a beer. One of it is the yeast that goes in there, which can certainly affect the flavor from, having either a very neutral impact on the beer to something that's either very fruity or spicy. The hops, can impact the flavor as well. And those flavors can range anywhere from kind of woody type of flavors or herbal type of flavors, all the way up to what I call bruised tropical fruit type of characteristics. And then the malt, which is basically kind of the backbone of every beer, right? So the malt can either be something that adds flavor to the beer in certain ways, whether that's, toasty flavors or caramel flavors or bready flavors, or maybe some slight raisiny type of dried fruit type of characteristics. Or it can just kind of stand out of the way, and it really depends on the type of malts that you're using. And so you can combine all three of those to come up with, different styles of beer. And with the IPA, it's definitely more leaning towards the flavor profile of what the hops provide in that beer, where, like an Oktoberfest lager is more on the opposite spectrum, where a lot of those flavor characteristics are coming from the malts that are being used in the process.
We saw that you also have an Ales for ALS for 2020. Is that the first charity-based ale that you've offered, or have you done other partnerships like that?
No, we've done Ales for ALS. I think this is our third year doing Ales for ALS. Besides that, we've done things for the Black Ale Project, which goes to, veterans causes. We've done, trying to think of some other stuff. When we first launched Edgeworth, which is our American Pills, all the money, the first year for that, all the money went to rehabbing a World War I memorial here in Malden. So, we certainly do some charity-based, things with our beers, and we're happy to do that. We try to spend as much of that stuff as focused as locally as we can. Obviously, Ales for ALS is a little bit different. It's more of a national organization, but it's something that we, I personally believe in from a family standpoint, because we have somebody in our family that has been diagnosed with ALS. So it's, I'm doing whatever I can, to kind of help that cause along.
That's awesome. Definitely keep that up. We'll have to give that one a try soon too. Just to end this on sort of a fun question before we leave off and sign off. If you could only drink one style of beer for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's a tough question. It'd probably be the Pils. The Pils or some other kind of pale lager. I love Munich Helles style lagers. Those are delicious beers. Munich Dunkels are very good too. So something that's definitely a lager focused, where it's focused on the malt more so than the hops. But yeah, probably my answer.
Good answer. And for people, obviously they can stop in the tap room in Malden. Is there anywhere else they can find your beers in stores or online?
Yeah, I mean, we're distributed across Massachusetts. So we work with Craft Collective, who's a boutique craft, craft focused distributor, and they send our beer all over the state. So any place that has a lot of great craft beer, you should be able to find us. And if you don't, ask them to carry us. And they will hopefully bring it in from Craft Collective. We do distribute a little bit in Vermont. But it's, we send a pallet of beer up there maybe every couple months or something like that. And this year's been a little bit different just because of COVID. But generally, we were at one point sending a pallet of beer every month to 6 weeks, but it's been a little bit strange times this year. So it's a little bit less available up there, I would say.
And where can our listeners find you online and on social media?
So our website is idlehandscraftales.com. Social media handles are Idle Hands Beer. So we're pretty active on Instagram and Twitter, and actually Facebook as well. They usually all get posted with the same kind of information. If you're looking to come to the brewery to go to the tap room, we do recommend you have reservations at this point just because we have such limited seating. So you can find us on tableagent.com. Just search for Idle Hands Craft Ales and you should be able to give you the lowdown of the reservation system and stuff like that. So
awesome.
We appreciate having you on tonight and taking the time to talk to us. I'm looking forward to getting those beers from Bianca and trying them out as soon as possible.
You'll see us tagging you on social, don't worry.
Awesome.
Definitely. Thanks again. Cheers.
You're welcome. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Be sure to follow us on social at Uncorked Corner and on the blog at uncorkedcorner.com for a taste of more food and beverage content.
And if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe, rate, and review on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Thanks for listening.